Are you working on a foundation paper piecing pattern and wondering how you should join those sections? In this video I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. Hi there! Welcome to a new video on the Sugaridoo channel. My name is Irene and this channel is all about quilting tutorials with tips and tricks, and today we're going to discuss how you can join sections of a foundation paper piecing pattern. Most foundation paper piecing patterns come in multiple parts. So this block, for example, is a little heart and it has two sections. And a lot of foundation paper piecing patterns have multiple sections, but the technique I'm going to show you today is applicable on no matter how many sections you have. So today we have two sections and I'm going to show you exactly how I join them and how you make sure that your block will end up the size that you want it to be. The first thing you want to do is to cut off one of the sides of the section. So you're not going to cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance all around the section, but you're only going to cut one seam. And for this part I've already done it. So you can see over here, this is wonky, and this also. But this one I've already cut. And at the back side you can see that I have cut this on a 1/4 inch. So I've just put my ruler on this line and then cut a 1/4 inch beside it. And I've also done that to my other section, so this one. And I've only cut the two lines that are going to be joined. So I've left all the other sides of the sections uncut. And if you have multiple sections that you want to join, you are just going to cut the lines of the seams that you want to join. So once you've cut them, we are going to pin. And normally I hardly ever use pins when I'm quilting, but this is an exception. So here are the two sections that I want to join, and what I'm going to do is I take a pin and pin through the corner of the section. So I'm going to place a pin right there, and that pin is going to go through this point, but then from this side, of course, because I want to join these two sections like this. So that can be a little puzzle, but take your time and just try to match that point exactly. So there we go. It's going through on this side. Then you're going to place these sides nicely on top of each other, and I'm going to go to the other edge and place a pin in here as well, and then see if this matches up. No, it doesn't. So on the other side as well, I'm going to find the corner of the section. There we go. Two pins in here, and you want to keep them perpendicular to your fabric. And then I'm also going to do a pin in the middle, or you could do a pin on a point of seams that need to match. Just going to put it in. Oh, this is a bit of a wonky part. You can also do this on a part of a seam that needs to match, but I'm just going to place it in and check on the other side if it's coming out on the line of my section. So there we go. Now we have 3 pins in here. You can do as many as you want, but this is just to line up all the pieces, and you want to make sure that these pins stay perpendicular. So they shouldn't be flat like this, because then your fabric shifted. For example, when I would put this flat, and then I'm going to see if the lines match up, you can see that I'm way off. But when I put them back nicely perpendicular to my fabric, and then I place one in, then it's matching. So now you're going to properly pin your pieces. And I will just hold my fabric like this, make sure that my pin is perpendicular, and then place this pin in as flat as possible. So not pinning it in like this and then putting it flat, but already sticking it in as flat as possible. That way my fabric won't move as much. So, and now this part is pinned, I can pull this out. Pin it over there. Use this one. And that one can go out as well. So there it is, nice and pinned. And now you can just sew over the line, over the edge of your section. So now we've done the seam, I can take out my pins and I will check on the back side if I match the seam on the back side. Looks like that went great, and on the front as well. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rip away the paper in my seam. Even though I'm using tea bag paper, which is paper that is used to make tea bags, so you can leave that behind your fabric because it's perfectly washable since it's made for tea bags, so it's okay if it gets wet. But seams can get bulky, especially if you have multiple sections. I'm just going to rip away the paper from my seam to make my seam less thick. It's just it is optional, but I really like to do this. So here you have my paper ripped away from the seam, and because those seams can get a little bulky, as you see here, there are many pieces coming to one point. So this is a bulky part and this is a bulky part. I am always going to iron open my seam. So when I'm joining normal pieces, I'm often pressing to one side, but joining paper piecing parts, I always love to press them open. So here you go, first finger press a little bit because this is a little bit bulky, and now I can give it a press. It is nice and flat. So what you can do now is you cut around the block. So now that I've pressed my block, it's time to trim it. And when you're going to trim it to the finished size, or when you have multiple sections, you're now going to trim off the next seam that you want to sew. So you're going to pick the third section that you need to join and see where the seams should match and cut on only those seams and join them. And then you go ahead until the whole block is finished. But for me, my block is already finished, it's pressed. And now when you flip it around, you can see if you did a good job. And when you then put a ruler on it, you can see if it is the correct size. And what often happens to me is that it's not exactly the size of the block that I want it to be. And that is precisely why I leave these rough edges around the edge, because then you have some wiggle room to make the block to the finished size that you want it to be. When a quilt is finished, it can often look perfect and like the quilter is super precise and every seam matches, but when you zoom in, there are always imperfections. So with paper piecing, the method is pretty precise. So when you're making the sections, you are sewing over the lines on the pattern, so that is pretty precise, but then you still need to join the sections, you need to join the blocks. There's enough room to get messy, and that also happens to me. So for example, with this block, my seams over here are not perfectly matching, and that was just because I wasn't paying attention. I didn't put a pin on that spot, I didn't precisely match up those seams, but then when I take another block that I've joined, this is already a little bit better. But for me, that's okay. It's not about being a perfect block. But what I would like is to make it as good as I can. So this block, for example, it should be a finished size of 4 inches. And I've already quickly measured it, and it's not going to be 4 inches when I would have cut the sides already before I joined those seams. Let me show you what I mean. So what I mean is that when you would measure from this side to this side, that it should be 4 inches. And I have my inch ruler here. So when I line it up over here, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. That seems to match. And then this should also be 4 inches. We go 1, 2, 3, 4. That is not 4 inches, as you see. And you can lose some of the size of the block just by joining it, because the seam is a little bit bulky, or because it's not as precise as you want it to be. But for me now there is no problem, because a 4-inch block should end up 4.5 inches unfinished. So there is wiggle room for me to do that. That is great. So I'm first going to just cut up one seam, and then I'm going to measure from there. So first I'm going to place my ruler over here along this line, cut it off, and then this is going to be my baseline to make a 4.5 inch block. So I'm going to line it up over here, and then see what happens if I line it up over here. I have my 4.5 inch all the way over here, so I'm just going to move it a little bit to this side, so I have some wiggle room over here and some wiggle room over here. Line it up at the bottom. There we go. Now I can cut this off. It's already 2 sides. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to look at this line. I'm just going to look at the 4.5 inch line on my ruler. So we have a 4.5 inch line over here. And then I'm going to cut it. There we go. And then the final side. Also just looking at 4.5 inch over here and not trying to match the side of the seam on that side. There we go. And there we have a nice square, which is 4.5 by 4.5. So there we have the 2 little hearts that I've just cut. And I guess the story behind this is that you can go for perfection and you can try to reach it, but I think it's nearly impossible to get perfect seams on all your blocks in your quilt, and that it is perfectly fine to just have a little bit of imperfection in your quilts. I mean, these blocks, they look pretty cute, right? And this one doesn't have a match. This one has a seam that is not matching, but still I really like them. So with this system that I use to join my sections for foundation paper piecing, I get my blocks as perfect as I can get them, and then how they turn out, I'm always happy with them because I know I did my best, and they will look perfect in a quilt. Thank you so much for watching. These were my tips on joining sections for foundation paper piecing. If you have any questions about a quilty project or a technique that you want to learn more about, leave that in the comments below. I would love to read it, and maybe I can make a video about it sometime. I also wanted to mention, if you are joining the Sugaridoo quilt along and you haven't ordered your kit yet, hop over to sugaridoo.com/call to order your kit. There is still a 10% discount on them until the 15th of October. thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week again in a new video on the Sugaridoo channel. Bye!